and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the questions section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
Thanks for that, Jess. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. Today's topic is improving your security posture, how human security and zero trust elevate your program. Sounds like a great topic and one I'm really excited about. I want to start by saying a big thank you for joining us, everyone who's here today. Delighted to see everyone. And today we'll be hearing from experts at Nisuni and Palo Alto Networks. I'm Keith Ward, and I'm honored to be part of the team that includes Jess Steinbach, who you just met in the video, along with Scott Becker and David Davis. Now, on today's EcoCast, we're giving away three $300 Amazon gift cards. And remember, as Jess said, that you do have to be present to win. All the terms and conditions you can find in that handout that was referenced before. So, if you all are ready, let's get going. I'm excited to set the table for today's event by having a discussion about zero trust and the human factor with noted expert Larry Seltzer. Larry is going to be joining me in just a moment, and we're going to have a fun, freewheeling discussion.
Hey everyone, I'm Keith Ward with Actual Tech Media, and it's my pleasure today to talk about the perils of ransomware with Larry Seltzer. Now, Larry has got deep experience in the ransomware space. He's a longtime journalist covering cybersecurity and also has a CISSP certification. As you know, that's a rare combination. Now, he served as editorial director for numerous publications in the IT field and has written hundreds of technical marketing documents and thousands of published articles. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say he knows his stuff. Larry, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about zero trust. First, can you define it? Not sure everyone thinks of it the same way. And then can you explain why it's a central idea in helping stop ransomware?
Okay, zero trust is the philosophy that all entities on a network, users or programs, that attempt to access a resource need to prove who they are and that they are authorized to have that access. The standard example of the old wrong way to do things is to have a firewall around the data center and everything that gets past the firewall is trusted. Mm-hmm. The network needn't be as simplistic as that to suffer from too much trust, but it's true still in the real world of IT that once you get past the firewall, you usually have widespread access. And so to understand zero trust, you have to assume, as security people do, that there are already attackers inside your network. Mm-hmm. So the relevance to ransomware is that the attacker inside the firewall has a base from which to reconnoiter. Initially, though, past the firewall, the attacker may have low privileges, but may be in a better position to compromise more privileged users through social engineering or whatever. And we call this moving laterally through the network. If the attacker is good and the network's too trustworthy, then you can get to the classic ransomware disaster scenario of being able to encrypt your data and delete the unencrypted versions. So if you want a good example of a too trusting authentication system, look no further than the US intelligence community. You must have heard of the highly classified information leaks recently, and the New York Times just reported today that the leaker is a 21-year-old member of the intelligence wing of the Massachusetts Air National Guard. Don't let this happen to your enterprise.
Absolutely. So Larry, I would say the majority of companies these days are probably mostly hybrid when it comes to storage. At least that seems to be my perception. Lots of storage in the cloud, lots of storage on premises, a mix of both for most organizations. I think that's fair to say. Is one type of storage on premises versus in the cloud better or worse in terms of ransomware vulnerability? So are you better off having it all on premises or all in the cloud? Can you speak to that particular issue?
Well, you definitely need to keep your backups off site, whether your data is in the cloud or don't keep your backups on in the same location as your data. That's for lots of good reasons. Other than that, zero trust is about putting impediments in the way of unauthorized users, and having data in more than one site might present such an impediment, but it's not a good strategy, really. You should put the data where it's best for users and for performance, and protect it where it is. This means that you don't want to have like one guard at the data gate, like the firewall around the data center, but you have to be. This is the hard part. You have to be thoughtful about who gets at what access to what data. Even a high-level administrator with very privileged account access shouldn't have necessarily access to all data. Even the CEO shouldn't have access to all the data. What if the CEO's account is compromised?
Right.
This kind of planning is hard to do, but it's essential to zero trust. In a modern enterprise, you're going to like you said, everybody's hybrid. I think it's probably rare that someone's not using like Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace or somewhere else for cloud for some purpose, right. And storing data there. And that's a good idea, by the way, because those companies have a lot of really smart people protecting your data 24/7, 365. And it's unlikely that you're going to be better at it than they are. Although you can still screw it up when they're running the data.
Sure. Okay. Finally, Larry, last question for you. What is the vulnerability these days of employees to like social engineering? We've all known about this for a really long time. In terms of ransomware, is this still a major way that the attackers get in? And how vulnerable? In other words, how vulnerable is your organization through its employees and through social engineering? Is this still a huge worry?
It's still the primary way that they get in. It's social engineering, phishing sites. This stuff has been going on for like decades now, and it hasn't been solved because there's no easy way to solve it without. It's hard to solve it without like really inconveniencing users, so it's common for you'll see. It's called spear phishing sites, where the attacker will scrape LinkedIn, get names, and try to figure out email addresses and who is whose boss, and then write an email from the boss to an employee that they're trying to compromise and say, here, like, click this link or whatever. And that's still really widespread. So you need to stop that. I mean, zero trust is an answer to this because, partly because that, you want to limit the user who is compromised. The attacker should only have whatever privileges that user has in the worst case. But there's also the authentication end of it. And this is really important for phishing. You can't do authentication right without multi-factor authentication throughout the network. And this is very inconvenient for people, but too bad. There's a very high percentage of successful real-world attacks that would not have succeeded if the target had used two-factor authentication. The first generation was the SMS text sent to your phone, and that's very out of favor in security circles. The second is the cryptographic apps, authentication apps. I like the Microsoft one because you can back up all your two-factor accounts and your Microsoft account, and if you get a new phone, it's much easier to recover.
Right.
That's probably, the most common now. Generation 3, the gold standard now for authentication, is the FIDO2 token with WebAuthn, so it's called, software at the other end. And FIDO2 it's a standard of authentication, physical authentication keys like this one. And WebAuthn is the server side of that. And the two use public key cryptography to authenticate each other. There's nothing running on the computer. On your computer, there's a chip in this key that does the actual cryptography. You plug it in typically to the USB port, although this one can actually connect with NFC. I've never tried that. And by the way, it also has a fingerprint reader as yet another factor.
Yeah.
These are the things that make for really strong authentication. And there are companies like Google, most famously, that have eliminated passwords completely. They use FIDO keys for all authentication. These are old standards. FIDO goes back to 2016. WebAuthn is 4 years old. So why aren't people using them? Because they're inconvenient. You have to have them around. Like, I'm at a desktop computer right now, and I could just plug this in and then it would be in. But
Right.
What if I want to use my laptop? You have to have it on you. And in fact, that's why I don't even really use it most of the time, because of that. And it's mostly here on my keychain for showing off like this.
Yeah. The bottom line, it seems like, though, is ransomware isn't going anywhere. It's getting more sophisticated, and companies simply cannot let their guard down at this point. The walls have to be higher than ever, and it's going to happen to you, so you've got to prepare for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Zero trust and strong user authentication with multiple factors are the best practices now for protecting yourself against ransomware.
Absolutely. Well, Larry Seltzer, this has been a great conversation. Really enjoyed your insights on this, and we will talk to you soon, hopefully, and get some more knowledge from you. Have you dropped some dimes, as my kids say, right? So thanks again for joining us today. Had a great time.
Okay, thank you. I had a good time too.
Okay, what a fun conversation with Larry. I don't know about all of you, but I want one of those little USB sticks that's got all that cool stuff on it. So now it's time for a poll. We want to know what your time frame is for adding new IT or updating your existing IT solutions at your company. So is it happening right away? Are you still in the planning stage? Or are you somewhere kind of in between? You're implementing things now, and you're getting it done, and you're ready to launch. So this is really interesting stuff for us to know. We always kind of like to know where people are with their planning. And with that, we'll keep those votes going a little bit longer. But now it is time to move along and get to the main event. So really excited about having Nasuni on today. And I'd like to welcome Ben Clark from Nasuni, who is going to be presenting for us. Great to have you here today, Ben. And the ball is in your court. Take it away.
All right, thank you. And you can hear me okay?
I sure can.
I think that is a yes.
Yep.
Well, thank you. So, hello, everyone. My name is Ben Clark. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Nasuni, and today we're going to talk a little bit about who Nasuni is, what we do, about how we incorporate zero trust security into some of our products, and I'm going to jump right in. I think that keynote was an excellent segue. But first we start, one of our main taglines here, which I think fits zero trust well, making your files accessible from anywhere and protected against anything. And those are going to come in later when we talk about some of our newest products. And so I wanted to start with a fun video, and this video we made for a customer webinar we had on ransomware that was actually, we called it an unhappy hour, kind of talk about, unhappy stories about ransomware. We formed a fun video around our solution and kind of like a skit, and it fits in perfectly with that keynote. As you can see, the subject is spear phishing gift cards. And that's actually, at Nasuni, almost every new employee we get, in the first week or two, they get an email or a text. Somehow these hackers can do this, and it's usually from the president or the CEO requesting money for gift cards, which is pretty funny. And so we made a little video about that and how that kind of fits in with our solution. So I'm going to kick it off and start with a fun video.
Brittany the intern just got an urgent email from her CEO. Looks like he needs gift cards ordered for some customers and provided a link to get them. Brittany orders them and heads out for lunch. Uh-oh, this can't be good. Let's see what Mike in IT is up to. Mike just got an alert from support that users can't access their files. He jumps into action, checking out the logs. Go, Mike! Files are getting encrypted across multiple locations faster than he can pinpoint where the attack is coming from. Meanwhile, productivity has come to a halt. Unlike Mike, it looks like they're having a great day. This downtime is going to get expensive if Mike doesn't figure it out soon. Let's check out what's going on in the alternative Nasuniverse. Mike just got an alert that Nasuni detected an attack at the edge and shut it down in its tracks. In the Nasuniverse, Mike is having a great day. Meanwhile, productivity hasn't skipped a beat. In fact, no one even noticed. All is calm in the Nasuniverse.
All right, so that's fun video that we saw, and you can kind of see how we'll talk about our ransomware solution later, but how it, quickly detected files being encrypted at the edge and stopped the spread. But like mentioned in the keynote speech, this is actually a stat that, really surprised me, that 95% of successful cyber attacks are caused by human error. And that means unintentional actions that can cause the spread or help the security breach take place. And that, it could be things like those emails, phishing, clicking on a bad attachment. So people really are the weakest link in the security chain. And I mean, the surprising thing is we know there's a ton of ransomware solutions out there. There's a ton of security solutions out there. But at the end of the day, ransomware is going to happen. And so you got to have a plan in place, and you got to be able to recover from it quickly. Because even with all of those solutions in place, 19 out of 20 of these attacks are caused by human error. And that's what makes zero trust security approach important. And like we talked about in the keynote, at the highest level, what does that mean? Verifying every user, validating their devices, and intelligently limiting their access. And if you can do this with your platforms, your solutions, how your organization works on a daily basis, it can really help avoid getting into some of these situations. And so the next slide, another fun slide on the next one. I was trying to find like some really simple, I think this is a very simple graphic for zero trust, but before I found this, ChatGPT is all the rage these days. And I was like, I wonder how ChatGPT would explain zero trust security in the simplest way possible. So I asked it to explain it to me as if I was a 5-year-old. And so it gave a really good answer. It surprised me. Zero trust security is like a game of Mother May I, where you don't trust anyone until they ask permission and prove who they are or prove who they say they are. And then jump to the third paragraph. That means even if someone knows the password to get in, they still have to prove who they are and why they should be allowed in. It's like having a secret code that only the people who are supposed to know can use to get in. And so that's a great explanation of zero trust. And so today we're going to jump into some of the security parameters that we apply here at Nasuni with some of our solutions, and I'm going to jump right into that. Today I want to focus on some of our newer solutions, but to introduce what Nasuni is quickly, Nasuni is a file data platform, and we provide all the capabilities of your primary file shares, backup recovery, ransomware protection, disaster recovery, and multi-site file synchronization all in one solution. And so the file data on Nasuni resides fully in object storage like Amazon S3 or Azure Blob. And the use of object storage can actually help improve security. And so if you're familiar with object storage in general, it's a different kind of cloud storage than block storage. And so it offers greater durability. It's much more scalable. And with Nasuni, we make object storage great for storing file data. So with volumes and files of any size, the metadata that can describe the files, and unlimited immutable versions. On Nasuni, the scalability is endless. We have customers with multiple petabytes and tons of snapshots for their data. Another thing I wanted to point out on this slide, what was the edge access part of this. So Nasuni's edge instances are access points to the global file system in the cloud. And what these are lightweight VMs that cache copies of the active data from all of the object storage in on-premise locations or cloud regions, so there isn't latency and you can access the data you need with almost no latency. And so for your data protection strategy, these edge instances are the front line, and they send the snapshots up to the cloud at very tight intervals, where then they become immutable objects and are basically at that point impervious to ransomware. And we'll get into that a little bit later. And so where do we fall in the grand scheme of things? You know, defense in depth means a lot of things. It just means multi-layered approach. So one of these layers keeps that ransomware out, whether it's, you know, even your employee culture, physical security, being careful with name badges, multi-factor authentication, having defense in many places. So where does Nasuni fall in your security stack, in your solution stack, for providing another layer of security? And so like I just was talking about, Nasuni is in the area of your file data, and file shares are everywhere and a lot of times can hold up to 80% of your company data. And the graph on the right is some research we did with ESG, and the top two systems that are generally impacted by successful ransomware attacks were storage systems and cloud-based data. So when you're looking at this slide here, your storage systems and your cloud-based data are two of the most impacted systems of an organization, and that file data can be up to 80% of the company data. And so it's just another reason why this is an area of focus to provide an extra layer of security. And you know, these days, large organizations have a full stack of security solutions, multiple, to cover all bases. And so today, like I said, wanted to focus on two of our newer solutions on the Nasuni File Data Platform, which is our ransomware solution, but also Nasuni Access Anywhere, which we'll start with right now. So Nasuni Access Anywhere, what is that? And so Access Anywhere is an add-on service to the platform that's basically focused on productivity tools for organizations, which most have right now, a ton of hybrid and remote users and project teams that allows them to synchronize, manage, search, and access files from anywhere. Hence the name Access Anywhere. It offers high-performance VPN-less file share access for these remote and hybrid users, integrates the organization's file shares from their Nasuni files with collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams, so you can access all your files on these collaboration tools, and provides productivity tools such as desktop sync and external file and folder sharing to enhance productivity and provide access to all of your files, could be petabytes of data onto SUNY seamlessly from anywhere on any device. And so, we talk about having, all your file data onto SUNY. Obviously, security is important and zero trust, but with Access Anywhere, think about that. We're talking about hybrid and remote workers all over the globe, multiple locations, maybe working from coffee shops, accessing all of your important data on the SUNY from multiple devices. I think this is the bread and butter of a solution that needs some zero trust security. And so this was designed with security by design and incorporates a lot of those features within it. And so I kind of just wanted to walk through some of the steps taken with Access Anywhere to ensure security for all of these remote and hybrid workers. And so, number one, identity authentication. We talked about this a lot. So users are authenticated against the customer's identity management systems that they may already have in place, as well as two-factor authentication to start a session with Access Anywhere in a web browser. So authentication is extremely important. Audit logs of all file activities that go on within Access Anywhere, whether there's downloads or file changes, are logged to keep up with activity and have records of that. And shared link governance for data loss protection. So when we're talking about external file sharing, sharing of links, there's a lot of constraints that can be configured to avoid data loss protection. So for files, private links can be created. There's passwords that can be set to secure the file, and external users can be configured to require authentication before accessing these files. Links that you send can be set and configured with expiration times, as well as private links and passwords, which, it's just always a great activity to have in place when you're sharing things externally. Maybe something is confidential and you send them the link, and that link lasts forever, and you don't want them to have it a year or so down the line. So it's always good to have expiration times and passwords incorporated there, as well as with sharing this data, watermarks unique to each user's, and the ability to configure these shared files to be required to view them in a web browser only. So you can kind of limit who can download the sensitive data as opposed to who can just view it. In addition to that, geolocation logging. So this is an interesting feature that where a file is uploaded from is recorded and logged for each file, which can be some important information for certain industries. The next couple slides kind of just, might be a little repetitive, but just wanted to highlight a few of these things. So, of course, access control permissions, a single source of truth for these files can be configured from the admin, who can access them, and a lot of configuration details for that. Audit security, which I mentioned before, all file events, changes, downloads that occur when using SUNY Access Anywhere are recorded. And bring your own device security. And so, like we said, this is made for hybrid remote workers. So this controls which devices and access clients can use, or which devices clients can access this data from. And this could be cell phones, it's not always going to be their company desktop. And so there's some configurable security around devices as well. All right, so that just wraps up some of the things incorporated into this solution that we have for remote and hybrid workers. And now we're going to jump into what SUNY has for ransomware protection. And so, like I said, the data, we have these edge caches. So when you're making changes to your data from your remote offices or wherever you are, there's no latency, and it's like you're working from a server right in your building there. And so that's important. Ransomware protection at the edge is important. And so let me show you what this solution looks like. So Nasuni has a comprehensive ransomware protection solution all the way from detection to recovery. If we start from one, recovery points as often as 1 minute with an infinite snapshots. I'll get to that a little bit later. But when we're talking about zero trust, I think number 2 and 3 are some of the main points I want to highlight. Number 2 is edge detection. So with Nasuni's ransomware protection solution, it's continuously looking at the edge for any anomalies or file changes that occur there. And so if a few files are encrypted with a ransomware signature, very quickly an incident will be created and notifications will be sent to all of your administrators. And this is looking at individual files at the edge. And so this is important because this is much more granular than a lot of solutions and a lot quicker. We're not looking at backups after the fact, analyzing them for anomalies. This is continuously looking at what's happening at the edge at the individual file level. And so then if files, you have your incident, you have your notifications and your alerts, people know something's up. But if this continues and more files are encrypted, the mitigation policies kick in. And this could happen, the way ransomware infects files these days, I think it's Lockbit that is one of the fastest out there. It could be thousands a minute. So just because you get an alert doesn't mean you're going to be able to stop it. If we just have this detection component and it's the middle of the night and you get an email that something fishy is going on, I don't know how many more files and how much more spread there could be before you wake up the next morning and figure it out. And so our mitigation policies, if the ransomware continues to infect files, immediately cuts off that client and sends you more notifications to let you know that client has been cut off and it's identified the source of this ransomware. And so we discussed earlier, 95% of these attacks are human error. And so with this mitigation policies, we're cutting it off now down at the device level. And so, if someone kind of triggers that ransomware attack, it's coming from their IP address, boom, cut off from the system, limit the blast radius, limit the spread. And so if we're looking at that same scenario of the IT guy asleep at night when ransomware happens, it doesn't matter if he doesn't wake up because it's already cut off and the spread has been extremely limited, which obviously that will then help with your recovery. It's not spreading throughout multiple volumes and thousands and thousands and thousands of files. And so all this goes into the built-in recovery aspect of Nasuni, which has always been our strength and our story in the first place. And so if we go to number 5, incident reporting, I think with zero trust, you want to make sure the person is who they say they are, but it's also important to have visibility into what's happening, into the information. And so as soon as that incident is created, you get a incident report that details the scope, timeline, and mitigation measures that can be used for audit and compliance, but is also extremely valuable for the recovery process. And so it might be a little small on the screen there, but as soon as that incident is created, this report is created, and you can see exactly when the attack started, how many clients were involved, how many clients were blocked, the amount of files encrypted, as well as a list of the affected files. And what you can't see in these 2 shots is also a timeline of the full attack. And one of the most valuable parts of that timeline is, it shows you similar information to here, start of the attack, when the incident was created, when the client was blocked, but all the way at the beginning of the timeline is the last clean snapshot already identified, which so when you go to that recovery process, you already know when to recover to, you already know what files were infected, and the blast radius was already severely limited. And so finally, things that take longer than restoring 1 million files with Nasuni Cloud File Storage. So like I said, this is our bread and butter. This is what customers have loved about Nasuni for years. And our ransomware protection solution that I just went over with the detection and the mitigation and the reporting aid to the overall time to recovery and make this story stronger. Oh, I thought I heard someone come in there. Am I running out of time? Well, this is my last slide. You know, I mentioned earlier, Nasuni snapshots are unlimited and incorruptible, and they can be taken every few minutes, and stored in cloud object storage. So we have customers with over 1 billion snapshots, just to give you an example of how many you can have. And these can be taken every few minutes. So if you are infected with ransomware and you have to restore, you already have multiple snapshots of intervals a few minutes away or a few minutes apart that you simply dial back to the point in time before the attack occurred without having to move or restore any data. And so those changes at the edge are being propagated up to that gold copy up in the cloud. And so when you have to dial back from a ransomware attack, you're not restoring anything. You're simply, use the term again, dialing back. And now with the granularity and the ability to kind of stop that blast radius, you're able to restore exactly the files that were impacted. So you don't even have to restore a full folder anymore or a full volume. The solution automatically queues up exactly the files that were impacted. And so that's the bread and butter of our story. And yeah, that's my last slide. I think, you know, we got deep into the ransomware part, but I think being able to identify the specific devices that started the spread and looking at individual files at the edge and what the source is ties into that zero trust mentality from a ransomware protection point of view as well. And with that, that's my last slide. I think we have a few minutes for questions, right?
All right. Yeah, thanks so much, Ben, for that presentation. I love that slide, restoring things that take longer than restoring 1 million files. Just great stuff, because that is so important for for admins. The fact that restores happen quickly. So just superb stuff. So with that, what we're going to do is throw up a poll, and we're going to then ask a question. So first, the poll question is this: you've heard about what Nasuni offers. You went over all that, and so we want the attendees to tell us what other information they'd like to get from Nasuni to help them on their journey. There's lots of resources, as you can see. And remember, there's also a PDF you can download in the handouts section of the console. So with that, I think we just really have time for one question before we need to move on today. And I'm sure, that you're happy to follow up on other questions that may not have been, we didn't have a chance to get to. So here's one of the important ones, and one that's going to be top of mind for so many admins. How much traffic overhead is there for the ransomware component if Nasuni is continuously looking at all traffic individually? Is that going to bog down the network, Ben?
No, I really don't think it's, I'm not an expert on this point of view, but I've heard customers ask that in the past, but I think it's not a noticeable change in performance. And I don't know if I can provide the technical reasons why, but I'll follow up on that. But it really doesn't impact performance at all. I think it's a really minute amount of slowdown you might see.
Okay, that sounds great. And again, Nasuni is going to follow up with these questions, and and answer everything. Thank you so much for your time and information today, Ben. It was fascinating. Now we're going to move on and absolutely. Now we're going to move on and give away our first $300 Amazon gift card. The winner of today's first gift card is Nick Waldman from Alabama. Hey, congratulations, Nick. And we will be in touch to get you your gift card as soon as possible. Okay. And with that, it is time for our next great session. Joining us now from Palo Alto Networks is Mr. Don Meyer, Product Marketing Director for SASE. Don, the floor is now yours.
Fantastic. Thank you for the invite to speak here today, and welcome everyone to what we hope will be a very interesting session for you as well. As you heard, my name is Don Meyer. I'm Product Marketing Director here at Palo Alto Networks, focused on our SASE portfolio. But we're going to take a little journey beyond SASE, if you will, and talk about some things that we hope are going to help give you the right foundational elements to really start looking at how do we address ransomware fundamentally, and what we can do with a different approach towards security to help us get a handle on not only ransomware, but other threats that are coming at us. To do that, we're going to spend some time taking a dive into what we hope, again, is going to be interesting for you, a journey through zero trust, and really talking about zero trust from a fundamental perspective and how we can expect and how we can effectively deliver the right types of outcomes from our security postures. And like I said, to do that effectively, I think it's important that we take a step back and really take a fond look back at what used to be. This was kind of our blueprint, if you will, for how we started our cyber journeys. We looked at a typical environment where we would build our security stack to protect a location. And that's important because that gave us kind of the foundational elements for how we started looking at where and how we would deploy security going forward. Essentially, these locations pretty much were somewhat static in terms of how users would interact with them, how devices would interact, and how we would get access to our different applications. If you think about it, you know, security was actually a lot simpler when work was at place we went to, when we had to build out those security stacks for our different environments. Essentially, we would have that massive stack that would dictate and define how users could get access to their in-house applications, and as well how they could then go beyond the four walls of the organization and access any other application that we might have supplemented through either SaaS or cloud infrastructure, things of that nature. Ultimately, though, the main security stack was there at the data center. That's where we funneled all our traffic from. Most of the time, even remote users had to go funneling through this data center or to some other local POP somewhere that was a physical, part of our network, and we had pretty good control over, what our users could get access to. We built these very monolithic stacks that were designed around best-of-breed products, so whenever something new popped up in our environment, we'd go find that one solution to that one problem, and away we went. And pretty soon, it got to be a hodgepodge, if you will, of different capabilities, different techniques, different policies, different enforcements, even different constructs. But we're fairly well tuned to what our environment dictated. Okay, as difficult as that might have sounded, again, it was more of a simplistic approach to how we would be able to provide the robust capabilities needed to secure our users getting access to the different applications. Okay. Well, fast forward to digital transformation, and really when cloud started to take on and take hold, we started to see some interesting things happening. No longer could we relegate the center of our universe to being a physical location, now that data started migrating away from our physical locations into the cloud. At the same time, we started seeing adoption of cloud applications really starting to explode. And this all came to a head during the pandemic when all of a sudden, everyone who was in a physical location now was enabled to work remotely. And that had some really interesting implications because now data truly was everywhere. Users truly were everywhere. And providing security for our locations didn't work. It wasn't sufficient to be able to get users the right type of experience in getting access to the different applications. So what they started demanding was direct to cloud or direct to app type of connections. And what that did was take an already massive attack surface and just exploded it to something that is completely unmanageable. No longer could we continue to funnel traffic back to our data centers. Most users did not enjoy that experience, and so they would turn off their VPN connections so they could go direct to the cloud anyway. And all that did was provide a bigger black hole or a bigger gap, if you will, in terms of security postures, because no longer could we enforce any type of policy controls or anything on any of those sessions that were going direct to cloud or direct to the applications. And it became problematic. During the pandemic, we saw that the attack surface was really, really expanding and being exploited dramatically by a host of different types of attacks. A lot of ransomware was definitely rampant. But what we saw, it was distributed and propagated by very common ways. Obviously, man-in-the-middle phishing types of attacks were certainly problematic, had been problematic before the pandemic, but boy, did they become super problematic and easy ways to be able to spread malware and get malware embedded into different endpoints that then could propagate into the different applications or different parts of the networks. Clearly, the old way of doing things just wasn't working and was no longer able to be able to accommodate new ways of working, new ways of accessing applications, new ways of users having the right type of experience to be able to get them to the data and applications that they needed. And that was something that was really interesting as well, as experience all of a sudden became just as important, if you will, as the security policies and postures that we had defined to be able to protect our users. We found that if we forced users to do different things or to implement different workflows, that became problematic because they would reject that if it slowed them down being able to get access to their applications or slowed down their ability to get their jobs done. So we had to start thinking about how do we balance security, usability, and experience, and really had to rethink the strategies that we had implemented in the past and adopt a new way of thinking about how do we address all this and what is the right way we should start thinking about the outcomes. That's where Zero Trust really started to take hold. And it's interesting, we've been having conversations about Zero Trust since about 2010. It's when I recall first hearing the term Zero Trust. And back in 2010, you think about it, there were some interesting things that were going on. We started to see the advent of enterprise wireless access. We saw 802.11n as the wireless standard that was coming out. And for the first time, we were having hundreds of gigabits of connectivity, which made the experience on Wi-Fi equivalent to what it was on the wire. So people started untethering from their desks and started wandering around. Great, except if you're not at your desk and you're not at that port that I'm assigned you to, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're all about. And I got to start thinking about different ways of providing the right types of protections. So we started to see back then context starting to take shape. Context about the user, the device, perhaps even the location, what AP was this individual hopping onto, and the role that that particular user was associated with. If we could leverage that context, we could start doing some interesting things about how do we enforce the right policies now for these users. And thus, Zero Trust really started to take shape. But it's taken it some time to really manifest itself into something that is not only valuable for the organization in terms of the outcomes, but also aligned to the right types of experiences that our users expect when they're getting access to their different applications. And again, that's going to be important. We'll continue to raise that issue as we go on through this conversation. So now that we've got an understanding we had to change, Zero Trust offers kind of the right framework. Let's get an understanding really about what we mean by Zero Trust. There's a lot of buzz in the industry around Zero Trust these days. It seems like everyone's slapping Zero Trust on products and saying, hey, we've got a Zero Trust product. That's wrong. Zero trust is not a product. Zero trust is a concept. It's a construct. It's more or less an outcome, if you will, if you're doing security in the right way to address the needs of today's hybrid workforces, hybrid enterprises, multi-interconnected cloud environments, and so on and so forth. To really understand what it's supposed to do, you got to get down to the basic levels and what Zero Trust is helping us to be able to accomplish. Helps us to accomplish least privilege access, right? Containing that blast zone, if you will, and really reducing it down to something that's a little bit more manageable. Eliminating explicit trust and only providing implied trust. Once you've gone through the right rigors, once you've validated, the right information about who you are, where you are, and what you are, and that sort of thing. Again, just to restrict the amount of access a particular user device or application has in terms of the rest of the infrastructure. So we can, again, continue to contain that blast radius. And then we have to do that on every single digital interaction with our environment. Every single interaction. Now, I authenticated once. Does that mean I should have carte blanche access to be able to do what else I need to do? No, maybe not. I should have to re-authenticate if I need to get access to different parts of the application or different application sets themselves or different data sets. And I should have the same rigors in terms of least privilege and explicit trust elimination applied to that session. That's what Zero Trust is all about. It's eliminating, the ambiguity around user device, location, data, all that fun stuff. And again, it's important to understand that Zero Trust is an outcome. It's an outcome of doing security properly. There are some products that leverage these types of outcomes. One in particular is Zero Trust Network Access. That is a manifestation of allowing remote access, or a user who's remote, who's no longer on-prem, getting access to any application they need to in providing a zero trust outcome, if you will, for that. That's important. That's where we're going to be shifting gears to. But zero trust by itself is not a product. And if anyone's telling you they're selling you a zero trust product, run in the other direction. It's not true. And it's one of the interesting things about it. Zero trust is kind of an oxymoron, if you will, in terms of how it's propagated. I've never really liked the term zero trust because in a digital environment, you have to trust something to be able to connect to something. Really what we're trying to do is trust but verify, trust but verify. If you can provide the right credentials, the right information that I can then leverage to trust you, okay, I'll give you access, but I'm not going to give you carte blanche access and I'm just going to walk away from things. I'm going to continue to verify that you are who you are, that you're doing what I expect you to do, that you're just getting access to the things you should be getting access to at that particular time. That's what Zero Trust really is all about. It's not about eliminating trust, because you have to have trust to be able to establish some kind of digital interaction. That trust should be verified. It should be verified all the time because, unfortunately, things do change. As we experience with ransomware attacks, we can go to a legitimate site and have a drive-by session that's downloading malware without our knowledge. Well, my posture has changed, but my behavior is not changing. So I need to be looking at all different aspects of that digital transaction to make sure that I can enforce the right type of policy. Okay, fundamentally, sounds pretty simple, right? Okay. And if you think about it conceptually, it is rather simple. We talked about context. How do we get context? We get context about users, applications, devices, and data. Usually that can come from our infrastructure. And if we're leveraging a large enough data lake, we can have that available to us that is easily understandable by our security construct and leverage this rich context in our policy engine so that we can start to set tolerances or thresholds, if you will, around any deviation in behavior and posture, data sets, data transactions, things of that nature. And then we push that into a policy engine where consistently we can enforce that and have that continuous security available throughout the entire duration of that session. Okay, sounds pretty straightforward. It starts to get complicated, though, when we really start applying it to a hybrid environment where we have hybrid networks and hybrid users. Now, all of a sudden, the user has multiple perimeters, and we're starting to expand upon those perimeters as we start to see IoT devices come into play. And we're starting to see other applications now requesting access to different things, whether that's, in a containerized environment, whether those are serverless types of activities to be able to run specific aspects of that application. All of a sudden, we're starting to see that the perimeters aren't around users specifically anymore, but around a lot more things. Okay, so we got to start accommodating for those other things, and we have now new attack vectors as well. Not just the data center applications that quote-unquote ZTNA solutions are supposed to help us solve for, but also now anything that's in the public cloud, anything that's in the internet, anything that's a SaaS-based application, and so on and so forth. And when we go back to how we started constructing our networks before, the best-of-breed approach that we utilized before is still kind of how we think about applying security today. We, instead of having a consistent set of capabilities that can consistently ingest all this context, anytime our perimeters shift, anytime our attack vectors shift, we're deploying different types of technologies. They hopefully do the same types of things, but they're different technologies, which means that they have different policy constructs. They leverage different aspects of context. They're managed differently. And quite honestly, any change I need to make across any user or any application, I now have to start replicating those changes over and over and over again. The more manual a task is for something that I need to do, the greater the likelihood is that I'm going to make an error somewhere and I'm exposed again. Zero trust is impossible to do in this domain, in this vein, if you will. We cannot continue to do security, best-of-breed, isolated solutions that are tailored for a specific environment or specific type of problem and expect to be able to get the right zero trust outcomes. It's impossible to do. We need to evolve our awareness away from these point solutions that are siloed, that are specifically tailored for either an environment or a particular threat, and really start thinking about how we can consolidate that around a platform. And that's exactly what we've been doing at Palo Alto Networks. We've honed our teeth at the inception of our first products around a next-gen firewall approach that leveraged rich context. We were the first to bring to market this thing called App ID. App ID allowed us to get intimate with the applications. And why was that important? Because all of a sudden, what used to be a client-server architecture, where you had a dedicated client for a specific application that was dictated by a port and protocol on this magical thing called the firewall, all of a sudden that client interface became the browser, and that port and protocol became port 80 or 443, and the protocol became HTTP, HTTPS. Well, we knew we need to leave those ports open because we're connected to the internet, we're communicating, that's how our partners find us, our customers find us, and we communicate to other things. But we no longer had visibility that direct relationship or that correlation between a particular application and its port and protocol was no longer valid. We couldn't see that anymore, and thus we couldn't enforce any type of policy on it. What App ID allowed us to do is to get very intimate with any open port, any open protocol, really start learning applications fundamentally, not only from a signature perspective, but also from a heuristic perspective. The more intimate we got with the application, the more we understood how the application functioned, the greater the control we could enable, or the less control we could enforce, if you will, or allow or permit on any particular session, because we knew a lot about the applications. We augmented that with user ID, where we could tap into Active Directory or LDAP services and pull rich information about users and their roles and leverage that in our policy engine. We also supplemented that with device ID, where we do have an agent that can run on a device that gives us rich information about what that device is doing. More importantly, how the device is configured, where it's been, what services are running, is its AV enabled, are all the things that we should expect to see enabled on this device. How is its posture? Has its posture changed? Will the posture change throughout the session? We can leverage all that rich context now in our policy engine. And we can apply that globally, at global scale. So wherever a user is, wherever the application is, we can now enforce a consistent policy and make sure that that experience now, as we talked about before, is consistent in terms of how that user can get access to the resources that that user needs in a way that, again, eliminates the implied trust and dramatically reduces that blast radius. Oh, and by the way, since we have now this platform concept, we can start doing things with it, like embedding AI and ML-enabled security capabilities into it to help it become smarter, to help it learn what to look for and why. And that's exactly what we've been doing. We've built perhaps one of the most robust policy engines around a cybersecurity platform that is ubiquitous and consistent, whether or not you're a user on-prem, whether you're a user at a remote location or a branch office, or whether you're a remote user working from a home office, a coffee shop, a hotel room, wherever. It has a consistent set of services delivered from the cloud. So we have that cloud scale, that cloud of delivery, and we also have the same kind of experience in terms of updates and upgrades managed from the cloud. So users don't have to do anything, customers don't have to do anything with it. They get all the updates and all the upgrades available as any other cloud service. And we're continually augmenting them with other AI and ML powered capabilities so we can learn and adjust and make sure that the security capabilities are tuned to the most pressing issues, the most common threats that we're seeing, and then learning how to be able to identify the next realm of threats, the next types of threats that we see coming on board. And there are some telltale signs that we can identify and plug into these AI algorithms and help us to learn even faster. It is a complete solution. It provides zero trust network access, so you can get the right type of zero trust outcomes for getting access to private applications. But we don't stop there. Those same zero trust outcomes that we talked about can now be applied to how users get access to SaaS applications, how they get access to different internet applications and internet resources, how users in branch locations can get access to the same types of resources, and so on and so forth. And we've even embedded a digital experience management solution so that in addition to how the policies are consistent, we can monitor and manage the actual interaction, the digital experience of the users to see proactively where there could be some issues with regards to a user getting access to a resource, and proactively start now remediating some of those issues that are causing experience challenges for users. All of that in a consistent platform that is global, provides all the necessary security capabilities, and provides, again, that consistency with regards to enforcement in terms of policies, in terms of logs, in terms of experiences. And one of the cool things, as I said, we've been doing with that is adding on AI and ML-powered capabilities. When we do that, we can start to really expand our already industry-leading security to start addressing some really interesting areas where we see there are opportunities for enhancement. In particular, DNS security. We've started to see that DNS is now emerging as a really interesting threat vector, and an area where some of our adversaries are looking to exploit more and more. What's interesting about our capabilities is that we're learning how DNS can be exploited, and we're looking for the telltale signs of those types of exploits. We can see that in real time as we're interacting with a DNS service or as users are requesting some type of access to something that has to go through and be resolved by a DNS service. In real time, we can take a look and see, okay, how has this either changed, or has this transaction been manipulated, or is it being instructed to do things that we don't recognize it should be able to do? If we can identify that really quickly, we can prevent that transaction or that session from taking shape. We can automatically update our signatures on it, so anyone in our entire purview can now get access to these signatures, can say, hey, here's a new threat that popped up that's trying to exploit this weakness in DNS, and you can stop it right away. Same thing we're seeing on URL filtering, and as well in zero-day types of attacks and threats as well. Leveraging these AI ML-powered capabilities gives us the ability to detect more things quicker and prevent things more often than anyone else that we've been able to compare ourselves to in the industry. So when we start thinking about, again, the ways with which ransomware and malware are propagated, phishing is still kind of the number one methodology that the bad guys are using to help propagate these malwares and their malware signatures. And it's interesting, if you look at what was going on during the pandemic, phishing attacks just spiked, and they continue to spike, and rightfully so. Again, they're effective. They're effective because we can't get a handle on as quickly as the kits allow them to be able to produce either the new sites or the new emails. They're getting very good at copying things. So it's really challenging to stay on top of it in a manual sense. Traditionally, again, once something was out in the wild, we'd have to investigate it, we have to take a look at it, we have to figure out what it was doing, and then write the signatures for it. We don't have that time anymore. We have to be a little bit more tuned to what users are doing, how they're able to make these new sites. What does the source code look like for these different malware sites? And even if they're embedded on a legitimate site, what are we looking for in terms of kind of some of those instructions in some of the payload profiles? That's exactly what we're starting to do with our product. And because we have this consistent set of capabilities across anywhere that a user is, we can apply this universally for any different user, any session, anywhere in the world. We can start to look at things like SaaS phishing detection, where we're actually looking at source code on the websites and looking for telltale signs that the source code has either malicious content embedded in it or malicious activity that could be embedded in it that's going to direct users to download some kind of malware. We're also looking at the kits, as I said before, that we see utilized over and over again for building out different websites. So we've got this phishing method detection model that's embedded into our capabilities that allow us to look for the source code and the different kits that are being utilized. And as soon as we see telltale signs that this particular kit has been utilized, in real time, we can block access to that particular site. And we're also looking at providing protections against man-in-the-middle by providing some detection capabilities that allow us to have identifiers for our different sites that we're seeing, and as well look at how we can dive into, again, the source on those different sites and look for the telltale signs that we're learning about how best these different man-in-the-middle attacks are being propagated. We've got a group of threat detection specialists in our Unit 42 capabilities here at Palo Alto Networks. They're completely plugged into and monitoring all the different phishing attacks, all the different propagation methodologies that are being utilized, and constantly updating our capabilities with that intelligence as well. So not only are we learning from the sites, but we're also learning from what's out in the wild, and we're taking all that knowledge and putting it into our platform. And so instantaneously, anyone who subscribes to that platform, anyone who's got a product that's associated with that platform, gets all of this rich information already plugged into their environments as well. So there's a lot of great ways that we're leveraging these great new tools to really help get a handle on what's going on out in the wild and provide the right types of real-time protections in real time that allow our users to stay protected, but more importantly, stay also connected and stay efficient and stay productive. I think as you look at where security is going and you look at how important now it is for our users to have a pleasant experience. If you can mirror the right types of capabilities, the right types of enforcement, the right type of policy to a good, or if not an optimal user experience, you'll find that users are more likely to adhere to the right policies, more likely to adhere to the right types of usage capabilities. You're going to get better outcomes, and your users are going to stay connected and stay happy. And thus, you're going to stay in control. And I think that's really the key for how we're going to evolve these capabilities going forward. Again, best of breed worked for us in the past when things were relegated to our premises, where our big security stacks were designed to protect different locations. Doesn't quite work anymore. The ability to integrate disparate products through APIs, it's challenging, and it doesn't provide all the robust capabilities that are required to address and adhere to and leverage things like AI and ML. And at the same time, any changes that we need to make, we have to manually go and make those changes again through APIs. It's a little bit more cumbersome. We feel that a platform approach is probably the right way to address security going forward, and not just a platform approach that's leveraged in a silo that's focused on maybe just private app access or focused on SaaS access. A platform approach that's looking at how users need to get access to any application, anywhere, to be able to do their job. That holistic approach is certainly going to help propel organizations further into whatever their digital transformation initiatives define for them. Keep them in control and provide the right types of zero trust outcomes that they need to enforce the right types of policies. All right, well, hope that was interesting for you guys. Obviously, there's a lot more available at paloaltonetworks.com. We invite you guys to come take a look at us around our SASE capabilities and our platform capabilities to help you guys round out whatever the challenges are that you have in terms of addressing ransomware or other types of advanced threats. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time. And with that, I'm going to hand it on back over to the moderator.
Okay. Don, wow, what great information. I really liked how you defined zero trust. You said it's an outcome of doing security properly. It's not a product. That is so important to remember. You know, you don't buy zero trust, right? You make it your mindset. That's basically what you're saying, isn't it?
Exactly right. And as I mentioned before, if someone's trying to sell you a zero trust product, I would run in the other direction, because there really is no such thing. Zero trust is an outcome. It's what we're striving for in terms of deriving the right types of outcomes to address the needs of our users, our environments, and get the right security posture that we need today.
All right. Great stuff. So we're going to get to some questions for Don in just a minute, but first it is time for another poll. We want to know what additional information you'd like from Palo Alto Networks. They are ready and waiting to hear from you to answer any inquiries you have at all. And remember, again, to take advantage of the documents in the handout section of your console. They're great and free resources. So get them while they're hot. So Don, I think we have time for just one question today. We'll get one of the best ones we got in here. And again, you're more than happy, you and Palo Alto Networks, to follow up with anyone who would like some more information. So the question today that I think is most pertinent is that we hear about zero trust and zero trust network access. Now, sometimes they're used interchangeably, as if they're the same thing, but they're really not, are they? So how would you define the differences between zero trust and zero trust network access?
Great question, and I think it goes back to what you and I were just talking about as well. Zero trust really is a construct. It's a concept. It defines the right types of outcomes we want to be able to enable, accomplish, achieve, because we've done security the right way, or we've built the right type of posture. ZTNA came out as a solution, if you will, to solving some of the challenges of remote access. Now, in the past, we used VPNs to be able to facilitate remote access. And VPNs are great because they're a secure transport mechanism over an unsecure network. So we have a secure tunnel which we can now use to be able to get access to the different resources we need. And typically, those resources were housed in a data center. So that's where our VPN concentrators live. They live in a data center. Whether that's a cloud-enabled data center, was a physical premises-based data center, it didn't matter. Those VPN concentrators would tunnel all that traffic back to a data center. Well, again, back when remote was a nice-to-have and not a mission-critical function, terminating traffic at the data center was probably a good thing, because it's where, again, all our security was. It's where our big stack was, and the bulk of the applications where our remote users needed was living there in the data center. If they needed access to anything else, they could hairpin back out to the internet and get access to the other things. Again, remote was a nice to have, so the expectation was it wouldn't perform really well if I needed to get access to a lot of internet stuff, but that was okay. That's what I expected. Fast forward to, again, 2019, where we started to see, before the pandemic, kind of this inside-out approach that we were thinking about in terms of networking, where more and more users were outside of our corporate walls and more of our data was outside of our data center. Hairpinning all that traffic through the data center no longer provided a robust and pleasurable experience for remote users. They were mad. And quite honestly, as I said, they were turning off their VPNs because the performance was bad. All that did was open up some massive gaps in already expanding posture. And so organizations were not happy with that. They were looking for alternatives, and ZTNA, or Zero Trust Network Access, came about as an alternative. ZTNA really started back in 2010, as we were talking about, when we started to see mobile, or I should say Wi-Fi, enterprise Wi-Fi starting to take shape in the enterprise. ZTNA as a concept was designed back in 2010. A lot's changed between 2010 and now 2023. In particular, where users work, how users work, the types of applications that we have, even how we build our applications has all changed. But ZTNA traditionally was focused on just getting users access to the things they need on-prem. We think that that's an important first step in terms of addressing the security challenges that remote users are facing. But as we talked about before, ZTNA should not live in a silo all by itself. We should not have a separate set of policies governing and dictating how remote users can get access to internal resources. Those same types of policies, the same type of outcomes should apply to how users get access to anything. Thus, ZTNA really defines how a user is going to come into a data center and get access to internal resources around the zero trust principles. But we think you can expand upon that to really start looking at applying ZTNA principles, or that ZTNA outcome, if you will, to access to any application anywhere. However, going back to the question, zero trust is a construct, it's a concept, it's defining outcomes. ZTNA actually is a product that's a VPN replacement product to bring ZTNA outcomes, or I should say zero trust outcomes, to addressing remote access to internal applications, if you will. Hopefully that clarifies it. If there are other questions around it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Palo Alto Networks. Happy to have further conversations on that.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Don, for your participation. Just really illuminating and insightful today. Great to hear what Palo Alto Networks is doing these days around zero trust. And with that, we now come to our next Amazon card prize drawings. I'm going to leave the poll question up in the meantime to give you some more opportunity to respond on any information you would like to get. But now we're going to do a couple more prize giveaways. So the winners of the next two $300 Amazon gift cards are, but first, remember, you do need to be on for the entire event to claim these cards. And our winners today are Greg Maynard from California. Congratulations, Greg. And the second winner is Vincenzo Vaccarella. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Vincenzo is from Illinois. Congratulations to both of you, and we will be in touch soon to get you your gift cards. And so as you watch the session today, as we wrap this up, were you thinking that this type of event would be a great way to tell folks about your platform or solution? If so, we'd love to hear from you to help you determine which of our hundreds of events, and I mean that literally, we have so many events, which ones each year would be a good fit for you. If you like what you heard today, we can do something this powerful and impactful for you as well. Just contact us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. Okay, and if you enjoyed what you got today, we've got another event with one of the same companies coming up tomorrow. It's an EcoCast all about keeping your data safe and operations humming with SSE, SIEM, and SOAR tools. In other words, if you love acronyms, this is the event for you tomorrow. So it starts at noon Eastern time, which is 9 a.m. Pacific time, and I promise you it'll be worth your time to come out to that. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Nisuni and Palo Alto Networks again for putting together such great presentations. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. And I'd like to thank all of you who joined today for attending the EcoCast and for all of your great questions and participation. We couldn't do this without you, so thanks once again for being with us. Now that concludes today's event, and have a great rest of your day.